Hi everyone, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope that you're doing well. I hope you're having a great week. It is Tuesday night here, which means it's time for a Tag Tuesday book tag, and it's going to be the Fab Four Book Tag, originally created by Tom from LA Books, inspired by his love for the Beatles. I really enjoy the Beatles, and Tom was kind enough to include me as in his tag. He tagged me there in the OG tag. I'm like one of his session players or something. I don't know what instrument I'm playing though. Let's see if we can keep the beat on some of these. Prompt 1. I just fell out of bed, found out what key I had dreamed it in, and I played it. That's Paul McCartney on Writing Yesterday. A book that you dreamed about or that inspired one of your dreams. Well, around the time I first encountered the book I'm going to talk about, I had gotten tired of having nightmares and feeling trapped within them. It was really an unpleasant experience to be in a nightmare and then be waking out of them. And so I taught my mind not to remember what I was dreaming. And so I don't really remember my dreams. So certainly not about any of the books I'm reading. But I'll talk about A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I first encountered it. It's probably a year or two after I had kind of made that mental switch with dreams. And I didn't like the book. I didn't like the play. I thought it was whatever. I didn't understand most of it probably. But it has grown on me in time, and maybe I'll, start trying to have some dreams again. I mean, Winter Night's Dream, for example, right now. Prompt 2, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by John Lennon, a book that talks about drugs or was written under the influence of drugs. Dopefiend by Donald Goines, brutal book, a very intense book. Goines himself experienced heroin addiction from a very young age, and he was a very popular. He had very strong sales with his books. Many of them are like crime books or books that are sort of set in lower income communities that are experiencing drug trade, drug dealing, gangs, and some of his books can be really interesting, but Dopefiend is probably one of the most intense. Right, let's see. Prompt 3, we thought we'd be really big in Liverpool. So did I. That's from Ringo Starr. A book about someone who had far more success than expected, or a book that was much more successful than what the author expected. How about I, Claudius by Robert Graves? So this is the first of 2 volumes where Graves is creating a fictional accounting for the early years of the Roman Empire, really through most of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. It ends with the death of Claudius and the accession of Nero. But Claudius is kind of regarded as a fool. He's regarded as someone who is incapable of anything. He, in a sense, is revealing through his memoirs, which is how I, Claudius, and Claudius the God with his wife Messalina are posited. In his memoirs, Claudius, as an emperor, is secretly revealing that he knew the only way to stay alive in the horrors that were the early years of the Roman Empire were to just pretend that he wasn't a threat to anybody. And that's what he's been doing the whole time, that his speech impediment, his disabilities really aren't nearly as significant as he makes them out to be, so that no one views him as a threat and no one will hurt him. And ultimately he becomes Caesar. This happened in real life. He was not highly regarded. He was the younger son of a great general who had died young. He was the younger brother of a great general who had died young. He was the uncle of Caligula, who was a disaster, and somehow ended up being emperor because he was kind of the only guy left standing. Great book. All right, prompt 4, Sitting on a Cornflake Waiting for the Van to Come. That's another lyric from John Lennon in I Am the Walrus. A surreal book, or a book with some surreal elements that you enjoy. Wow. The key word there, as Tom noted in his own tag, was that you enjoyed. So I'm not going to include Kafka on the Shore, but I also read Ilona Comes with the Rain, one of the McCroll stories from Alvaro Mutis. That was fantastic. The surrealism there involves a character who has traveled across the Atlantic Ocean and claims to have had night encounters with multiple ghosts or spirits from personages who are centuries older. It's fascinating. It's a really fascinating book. The way in which that is part of the story, and there's much more going on for McCroll and the different people he encounters and the people he wants to spend time with. But that book is very strong. Highly recommended. All right, let's see where we are here. All right, prompt 5, The White Album. A book you love that had a minimal cover or that is written in a minimalist style. I would say a minimalist style would be Passing by Nella Larsen, and even in the recent film adaptation, the director Rebecca Hall noted, and the actresses who were portraying the two main characters, Tess Thompson and Ruth Negga, they noted that there's so much subtext within the book. It's a short book. It has just a handful of chapters and encounters between these two women who have been friends, have totally lost touch, and are now reconnecting, really from totally different worlds now that they inhabit, and realizing, what all of that would mean. And there's so much subtext, there's so much underneath that Larsen is sort of, showing you and showing you a peek into a room, and you can see the shadows in there of the past experiences for these two women, of what might be in their minds, what might be sort of their hopes, and it works so well. And I thought the adaptation really tried to capture that sense of nuance and deep subtext and characterization that's in the book. I enjoyed it. All right, prompt 6. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. It has in fact been raining here in Phoenix for a week. Here comes the sun. That's from George Harrison. Just gonna put it out there that I think Something is an amazing song. I think Here Comes the Sun is an amazing song. I think While My Guitar Gently Weeps is an amazing song. I enjoy the Harrison songs going back to like Rubber Soul, right? And then All Things Must Pass is, for my vote, probably the single best solo Beatles album there ever was. Anyways, a book of poetry that you found uplifting. I'm going to go with Ailala. I read these in May. They're incredible. They're from a Kashmiri mystic, Laltade, and they're beautiful. They have brilliant imagery. This edition has a great set of notes to help explain some of the cultural or religious allusions that occur within the poems, but these are fantastic. I reread them with my daughters in October. What I'm hoping is going to be uplifting and really interesting is I just acquired the African American Poetry volume from the Library of America. It has all sorts of great stuff across. The earliest poems, I think, are right at the end of the 18th century. I mean, it goes all the way up through very current modern poets. So I'm certainly looking forward to this. And, uplifting, it has James Weldon Johnson's Lift Every Voice and Sing. So we are good to go on that count. All right. Prompt 7, A Day in the Life, an experimental book that is very uncommon for its content or format, and yet works well. Certainly the posthumous memoirs of Bras Cubas by Machado de Assis. It's experimental. It is so far ahead of so many trends that will occur within the novel. Modernism, postmodernism. It is so far ahead of those that it is making jokes about books that haven't yet been written. That's how daring and fascinating and strange this book is. I really, really enjoyed reading it and cannot recommend it highly enough. I will also add The Ice Shirt by William T. Vollmann. While the posthumous memoirs of Bras Cubas is explicitly going in and just poking fun at novel traditions, at forms of narrative, at the social novels, realist novels, the big novels of the 19th century, and it is also getting into the joking with the more autobiographical fiction that will come later, many, many years later. The Ice Shirt by William T. Vollmann is fascinating and experimental because of the way in which Vollmann takes different genres and mashes them all up together and extends them through the book. It's his own personal experiences traveling across Greenland or certain parts of northern Canada. It's his own personal experiences with Indigenous people. It's historical references around different cultures that are interacting. It is these strange, dreamlike narratives of characters interacting with supernatural beings or in their minds and sort of having their cathartic moments. And it achieves on so many levels, and it's really a fascinating book to explore. Let's see here. Prompt 8, over half of Americans over 45 attribute the Beatles split to Yoko Ono. It's ridiculous. Just think back to your closest friends from when you were 19 and 20, and then think back to how many of them you're still hanging out with regularly. And could you imagine working with them? I'm just going to say. All right. I don't think the longest I've worked with a close team is maybe 3.5 years. And that's before life moves on and things change. So, yeah. A book about a woman, or if you can't think of one, a man who is unjustly blamed or accused of something. definitely was leaning towards Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. But I do think there's a way in which people misread Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And I think there are some people who almost view the book as a critique of Janie. Certainly there are characters within the book who are critiquing Janie, and it works on that level for the prompt. But I also think there are people who I think particularly because the book sometimes is introduced to high school students. That was when I first encountered it. There are readers who explore the book and almost wonder if Hurston is commenting and critiquing on Janie or on the different society, communities that she's part of in an overly critical way. And so this is a book that came to mind for that prompt. Prompt 9, limitless undying love, which shines around me like a million suns and calls me on and on across the universe. It's from John Lennon. And I should add that my wife and I, the first movie we ever saw together on a pseudo date, because we weren't dating yet in college, was Across the Universe, the massive musical adaptation directed by Julie Taymor of a bunch of Beatles songs. I probably listened to the soundtrack more than once just because of my affection for my wife before we were ever married. Anyways, a book that opened your mind and made you think of the universe in a new way, either physically or spiritually. That would be The Immense Journey by Loren Eisley. It's a series of essays, nature essays, sort of meditations on human existence, human consciousness. And Eisley's a scientist. He was an evolutionary biologist. He's a paleontologist. He's very firmly a scientist. And he even comments on not necessarily having religious faith, but his experiences in nature are written from this deep poetic level that feels spiritual. And I certainly regard myself as spiritual, and a degree in science. I've worked with science, I've taught science, but the fusion of those different sensibilities that Eisley has here, even though they're not explicit for him and probably would be explicit for me, I just found absolutely fascinating. And again, cannot recommend this book highly enough. All right, prompt 10. Mother Mary comes to me speaking words of wisdom. Let it be. It's from Paul McCartney. And if you've never seen the carpool karaoke that Paul McCartney did with James Corden, where they go and sing Beatles songs and drive around Liverpool, that's an incredible video, very touching. But Paul, a book that you found very powerful and moving despite its apparent simplicity. Last week I finished one, and that was Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. Very simple book, just from a random line. Here we go. Monarchy wars bring the devil era, a slip of the time between a date and a ghost mark. Rived by Darby's chill days embers. Oh, wait, hold on. Simple book, okay. Dhalgren by Samuel R. Delaney. It's genre fiction, it's science fiction, and doesn't have a particularly large cast of characters. Neither did Finnegan's Wake, really. There were like 5 characters in Finnegan's Wake. There's not particularly more in Dhalgren. And, everybody knows genre fiction is very simple. This book, let's check it out. Here we go. To wound the autumnal city, so howled out for the world to give him a name. Then in dark answered with the wind. All you know I know. Careening astronauts and bank clerks glancing at the clock before. This is sort of the Finnegan's Wake of science fiction. It does not appear to be any simpler despite being genre fiction. L.A. Confidential by James Ellroy is written in a telegraphic style. The telegram prose, and so the sentences are really short and fast. But it's also like 500 pages long, and there's a huge number of characters. That's, despite being written in such compact sentences, does not appear to be simple. I'm getting frustrated here, as you can tell. All right. Memoirs of Hadrian by Marguerite Yourcenar. This is a book that is very similar to I, Claudius in that it is a fictional representation of a Roman emperor. We have some recorded writings from Hadrian, very few. And Marguerite Yourcenar creates a fascinating and utterly compelling tale. We are in the mind of this person, and really getting into memoirs that are referencing certain trends within the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, but with a sense of humor, with a sense of self-awareness that I don't think the meditations possess in any way, and without the aggrandizement that the pseudo self-deprecation self-deprecating aggrandizement that's actually going on in the Meditations. This is a really, really wonderful book. It's not a particularly long book, and you don't have to know much of Roman history at all to really enjoy the character, the voice of Hadrian that is shared from Yourcenar in the book. So I'm going to create a prompt 11. You know, I left my home in Phoenix, Arizona for some Colorado snow. We went up to play in snow on the Colorado Plateau. But prompt 11 would be to put in a cover of a Beatles song and link that. I'm going to steal one of the best. It is the, I'm going to steal two of the best actually, because I feel like it right now. I'm going to steal Hey Jude, which Wilson Pickett sang and covered, and Duane Allman played guitar on. It's amazing. It lights the song on fire. Just be careful. Like, your headphones might overheat when you listen to it. The other will be the cover of Eleanor Rigby by Aretha Franklin. But I'm also going to tag 4 people, because there were 4 Beatles, and it's a Fab Four book tag. I'm going to tag Aaron Foster. I have no idea whether he's a Beatles fan or not. I'm going to tag Shelley Swearingen. I'm going to tag Roz from Scally-Dandling About the Books. I'm in part curious to know, like, people from the UK, if they're fans of the Beatles as well, I'm sure. And then I'm going to tag Mark from Book Time with Elvis. So this was the Fab Four book tag. And again, I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks.